am in a moment that I have to, already 1 year before, I have to plan everything for them, for my open research. And this was such a paradox for me that I was totally confused. And of course, I know that I'm talking about very stereotypical things, so I demand a kind of free situation for me, a kind of paradise, where I would like to work without any time planning. At the same time, this organization is also a kind of artistic research-based organization which is opening up the context that you really have time to prepare. But at the same time, of course, it is included into the economy which cannot abandon anything, which have to produce constantly. So it's a kind of paradox in which I was, and I was thinking how to deal with it, already inventing a kind of fake formats, and I was very uncreative with that. I said, okay, then I will have an open day. What is that? So I used exactly what we are all using when we would like to somehow abandon something which is put on us. And that's why I said I would like to talk here about those issues, and I hope that they will really correspond also to what it was already heard. Recently, I went back to one very short text. It's actually an artistic work of extremely interesting and I think really more and more actual Yugoslavian artist, Mladen Stilinović. And this is his famous text from the 91, The Praise of Laziness. And in that text, Stilinović, he wrote this text like 2 years after the fall of the wall and so on, so it was kind of discovery of the Eastern Europe, in which he said that actually art cannot exist anymore at the West because artists in the West are not lazy. And Eastern artists are lazy, therefore they are really the artists. But who knows what will happen with that artist in 20 years, maybe they will not be lazy anymore, but they will start to behave like Western artists. It's a wonderful text, I recommend it. It's written with a very, very subtle, there are a lot of subtle meanings in the text. And Stilinović, of course, is not inventing the notion of laziness, but actually he went back in this text to Duchamp and Malevich, especially to Malevich's text, where Malevich is writing at the beginning, I think it is from 1919, Malevich is writing already about the state of laziness as the real truth of mankind. And what is very interesting in that Malevich text is that he is criticizing from one perspective the capitalism because it allows only a small number of people to be lazy, but also socialism because the entire movement has been too much based on work. That's how Malevich is saying. And this is something what then is taken over by Stilinović. And Stilinović is saying the pity is that we are losing this absence of movement and thought, this privilege of dumb type, a total amnesia, indifference, staring at nothing, non-activity, impotence, sheer stupidity, time of pain, futile concentration. And I think that with that words, which are from Stilinović, I see a lot of correspondence with what was already said today. So I think we can discuss around them really about very interesting things. And now, he said, of course, Stilinović said, he goes even further, he said, knowing about laziness is not enough, it must be perfected and practiced, which of course it's a paradox, we all know. Huh? And also, Stilinović was an artist he is extremely productive artist, working all the time in a very special manner, but of course it's not about laziness as a kind of paradise of not working, but it's actually really about provoking or at least disclosing a way or disclosing another state of mind, how the thought is operating actually. And this also has something to do with what Joe was mentioning in the direction to theater, which is also very close to the way how I am thinking about theater and performance in general. It is actually really the field where you can experience the thought in action. It's for me, it's really the mechanism of thought. Huh? It's the evidence for me actually that the thought is something which is before reality, I would say, the theater. And this is something what I would also link to that what you say about contingency. Maybe we can go in that later. So, so he said, just to go little bit back to the historical context, artists on the East had enough time to concentrate on art and laziness, and when they produce art, they knew it was in vain. So that's also an interesting point. Huh? So when artists on the East produced art, they knew that it was in vain. Of course, that also has a kind of ironical perspective, because there were no institutions existing which would exhibit art, which would produce it, and so on. Sorry, yes. So he said artists on the East had enough time to concentrate on art and laziness, and when they produce art, they knew it was in vain. It was for nothing. It was just because they like to produce it. No? They enjoy it. And of course, this has a kind of relation that they were actually producing in a space which was not really full of institutional possibilities how to produce. Huh? So that's also a kind of ironic reference to that. But for me, it is very interesting also if we take this example and rethink it from the contemporary perspective. So how do we think, or how do we experience artistic subjectivity today, and how the artistic subjectivity is related to work? So what is the leisure of the artist, I would say. And there are 2 points which I would like to take from that. First is this point about dump time, which is a kind of time of non-action, time as dispossession, when you are put in halt, no? This time of laziness where nothing is going on, so nothing is happening. It's actually a dead time, but at the same time it is extremely creative time. And then another thing which I would also like to take out of that text is that there is a specific notion or a specific try how to reflect about the relation between art and artist and his work. No? And what is very funny is that Stilinovic was also an author of a very famous, not famous in an artistic circles, pamphlet. It was a kind of short sentence, and the short sentence said, "Work is disease, Karl Marx." Of course it was invented, Karl Marx didn't say that. But it became so popular when he did it that even some Marxistic theoreticians in the 70s were quoting Marx that he said that. No? So just that you know that what is also the background of that story. And these 2 points for me are, I still don't know how actually they are connected, but they are very, very, this connection is very, very strong, important for me to reflect upon it. Because I think that if we are thinking about if we try to think about contemporary artistic subjectivity, this subjectivity is mostly organized around the notion of work. Artist is really not just a worker, but also a producer in contemporary time. And this is also something what Stilinovic is somehow mocking in his text. He's saying on the art, everybody, on the West, everybody is producing something, and on the East, we still know how to be lazy. And then what is coming out of that fact is that if the artist, if the work and production is central to understand artistic subjectivity, then there is also a specific temporal mode in which artists today is all the time producing.